welcome this week's edition of The Focal Point. Tonight on The Focal Point, the nomadic people in the vast, arid and sparsely populated Horn of Africa. These people only know one way to survive, by the muzzle of the gun. They still live the way their ancestors did, except for one new thing, the AK-47, which they have acquired to replace the spear as the choice weapon to defend their livestock against their enemies. Join me as I take you on this tour of the Horn of Africa. They inhabit these vast plains located in northeast Uganda. For most parts, their life has remained unchanged for thousands of years. Western technology, medicine, dress, culture and Christianity, found in varying degrees throughout Uganda, have made virtually no inroads among them. Geographically, ethnically and politically, it is for all the practical purposes a country within a country. For better or for worse, the land and its people remain a vestige of pre-colonial Africa. It is the home of Karamojong, a people proud of their tradition, religion and Nilotic heritage. They occupy the plains southeast of Ethiopia, where they roam the area in search of pasture and water for their animals. The gun is an indispensable implement in their life. They strongly cherish their traditional cultures in all ways. These are the Toposa and the Dodoth pastoralists. If the Omo Valley in Ethiopia is the place where man was born, it is also the place where time stood still. Beyond the mountains, there is a tall nomadic Nilotic-speaking people who hold sway and dominate the expansive plains with their large herds of Zebu cattle. 17 different tribes, each with their own distinctive language, who live in the great gorge of the Omo and the plains beyond, whose lives have changed little with the passing of centuries. For centuries, the Karamojong have been pastoralists. Every day is spent the same way, leading the cattle to greener pastures. The plains of Karamoja are generally populated with scattered manyatas. Each manyata is surrounded by an impenetrable living fence with only one entrance. Within the fence are anywhere from 8 to 50 huts. In the center of each manyata is a corral. Every night, all the village cattle are herded off to the plain into the corral in order to protect them from cattle raiders from other tribes. The Karamojong believe that God has given all the cattle to them. The implication of that is that God has not given any cattle to their neighboring tribes. Unfortunately, the Pokot in Kenya, living right on the Karamoja border of Uganda, have the same conviction about their divine right to cattle. As a result, both tribes are continually trying to recollect their cattle. Violence occasionally results. It is no wonder that other tribes in Uganda refer to them as the Wild West. Cattle are so vital in Karamoja that it is often difficult for non-Karamojong people to understand the attitude surrounding them. Owning cattle is a mark of adulthood for men. Being without cattle is almost as onerous as being seriously ill. It threatens life. Moreover, a man can lose his entire herd of cattle in a brief raid. A mistaken judgment, such as poor choice of pasture or travel routes, can cost a life's work.
True to say that in Karamoja, not many of our youth have gone to school so that they get all other means of employment, to work in the government service, to work in the public sector, to work in the private sector. These opportunities don't obtain in Karamojong. What happens for that man? You will find that most of the youth in Karamoja are just redundant, and they look at raiding as an alternative source of employment. In any case, cattle rusting is paying to them, because if they went to, say, they went to Kapchora district, Sironko, or say Teso, and they collected some cows. These cows can be sold to buy them whatever basic requirements. They even use them for marrying. And the other one of maybe to add again with the cultural aspect. Here in Karamoja, the means for marriage is cattle. So every young man will strive to do as much as possible, even at a risk, to acquire this cow, so that tomorrow he's able to get a wife, to get a family. And in that case, it creates a situation of competition, where you find that everybody must struggle in order to get that cow. Most especially, you'll even find in a rich family where somebody owns 200, 300 cows, he still wishes to go out there to another community, another district, in order to get a cow. And also here is, when it comes to marriage, the cost of getting a wife in Karamoja here is quite high. It's about 50 cows, although today it has low, formerly it was very high. How do you get these 50 cows where maybe you come from a full family, but you still have a gun, and yet there are still opportunities for you to get these cows through cattle husbandry. Now, the other one which follows the lack of employment opportunities, or unemployment for that matter, is underdevelopment.
Previous norms of war, use of spears and sticks, only attacking males, the taking of cattle only, capturing of women for incorporation into the tribes, etc., have been broken with the incoming of guns and the politicization of local conflict, increasing the numbers killed, leading to attack on women and children, the use of rape as a tactic of violence, and the total destruction of properties, now common practice. The nature of traditional cross-border raiding between the Karamojong and other pastoral groups from Kenya, Uganda and Sudanese tribes have changed enormously in the recent years due to the widespread availability of small arms in the Eastern Africa. The Uganda government initially supplied weapons to small groups of home guards within the Karamoja sub-region on the grounds that Karamojong were under threats from cross-border raids by the Turkana and Pokot pastoralist groups from Kenya. However, the major source of these guns were originally from rogue elements in the Ugandan army, from the western Kenyan districts of Turkana, and from southern Sudan, where the 19-year civil war has given rise to widespread access to use of and trade in small arms. Armed with these machine guns, the Karamojong have been accused of raiding neighboring districts, notably Katakwi, causing displacements of people and untold human suffering. In December 2001, government of Uganda launched a program to disarm the Karamojong. Museveni traveled to Moringa area of Karamojong Moroto district, where he spearheaded the voluntary disarmament exercise. He gave a deadline of 15th February, after which he said those found in possession of illegal firearms would be arrested and charged with the illegal possession of arms, with a punishment of not less than 7 years in jail. By the expiry of the deadline, only 7,676 guns, less than a quarter of the expected 40,000, had been handed in by the community. But local leaders do not believe in the forceful method. They want to use a dialogue approach which they believe would yield positive results.
Because of this community dialogue, sensitizing people, talking to them rather than threatening them. During the disarmament exercise, for example, the district of Nakapri responded very well and voluntarily gave in a lot of guns. Out of this approach of community dialogue and peace building, we have been able to have meetings with our neighboring communities of Pokot in West Kenya. We have had meetings in as far as even Turkana. We have even gone to Lodwar in search of peace and through meetings.
The end results of the disarmament project was that some of the Karamojong who had handed in their guns felt insecure amongst not only their colleagues who remained armed and concealed their guns, but also tribes across the border. This prompted the unarmed Karamojong to again source out for arms from readily available markets in the troubled region. This is a road across the Kenya-Sudan border along Layoro River inside the Sudan. Here, roads are virtually non-existent. Over 100 kilometers away from Ethiopian border, the erratic rains cause rivers to burst their banks, submerging the roads, making them impassable. The Toposa pastoralists migrate as far as Moronjipi and occasionally further east into the disputed Ilemi Triangle at the Ethiopian border for seasonal grazing. The area covers over 20,000 square miles of semi-arid, sparsely populated grazing ground. The most treasured item among the Toposa people after cattle is the gun. Toposa openly carry guns without any restrictions. A gun is to a Toposa just like a grazing stick is to a Munyankole pastoralist. A man is not considered mature until he acquires a gun. It is this gun that will enable him raid the neighboring tribe for cattle, which he will in turn use to acquire a wife. Ironically, although the women play a passive role of morale boosting as their husbands, brothers and sons carry out the raids, they are usually the victims of the bloody act.
The victims of that successful raid is the woman. Because out there where they had raided this cattle, they raped women, they killed the pregnant women, they molested all those people who were in that Manyata.
Like their close cousins, the Karamojong, the Toposa of southern Sudan live in communal manyatas. Each manyata houses numerous huts with a number of families. Manyatas are headed by elders or chiefs who command a lot of respect in the settlement. This is Kalacha, a large Toposa community center 120 kilometers east of Kenya border. Here, the pastoralists, mostly women, gathered to board trucks to transport them to a place called Namurupus, where a big meeting is expected to take place. A group of women have formed a pressure group to try to persuade men, especially the youth, to stop cattle rustling. This is an African Union, IBAR, Inter-Bureau of Animal Resources initiative to stop cattle rustling. The program is targeting women by mobilizing and sensitizing them against the practice so that they in turn can pass over the message to the men.
We decided now to involve the youth and the women in this peace process, emphasizing to them that the elders had already identified them as one of the people who matter in this peacemaking process. So we conducted workshops in the whole of the year 2000 with the youth, and then we involved the women in the year 2001. So we held the first workshop for women in Lokchogyo in March 2000, and it was a very successful workshop. That workshop involved women from Toposa, women from Nyangatom, women from Didinga, and women on the Toposa side of southern Sudan. On the Kenya side, it involved mainly the Kwatela women of Turkana, because Kwatela is a very large community, subsection of Turkana. So when these women discussed, they discover that they are actually the cause of conflict, because they are the people who cheer up, who ululate, who sing war songs when their sons have successfully brought raided cattle.
The women move from village to village spreading the message of peace. Since the organization is convinced that it is women who suffer most during the raids, they can successfully spearhead the campaign against cattle rustling. They also believe that women can be influential by playing a role of mediators, as they are the main cause of rustling. These women have conducted several similar crusades in other places, emphasizing the message of peace. Over 200 kilometers away at the place of the meeting, people gathered here from women and influential leaders who have been converted speak against this bloody practice. Speaker after speaker condemn the practice and call upon the men to abandon the guns in the interest of peace. Although women, especially the elderly ones, are highly respected among the Toposas, it is very difficult to convince a Toposa unmarried young man to abandon a gun. During the meeting, from the surface, it looked like the message had sunk. But it will take a lot of nail-biting for the program to convince this young man that if he abandoned his gun, there will not be any threats from other neighboring tribes, and that he will be able to marry without being required to give a herd of cattle. A 600-mile 2-month journey down the Omo River through one of the most inaccessible regions in the African continent. The 40,000 square miles of the Omo River Valley lies in the shape of an oversized question mark across the rugged highlands of western Ethiopia. For 600 miles, the brown turgid water of the Omo flows southward towards the equator through some of the most wild and inaccessible terrain in Africa. The Omotic-speaking tribes of this region live several thousand feet above the river in the remote mountain villages which, because of their extreme isolation, have changed little over the centuries. To learn the secrets of Omo Valley and to gain access to its inner sanctuaries, one must travel by the river. Beginning as early as 1885 with Count Teleki's expedition, explorers have made brief and brutally difficult overland incursions into the lower reaches of the Omo Valley, but few came to understand the complexity of the land or its people. It has only been in the last 20 years, with the advent of a new raft construction technology, that Western travelers and scientists have begun to explore this secluded valley. At the mouth of a tributary flowing between the mountains of Maigudo and Azu, a large group of men and women of the Garube tribe gather on both banks of the river. The men smile nervously at a group of tourists as they cautiously approach and gather around the rafts. This is the land of a semi-nomadic Nilotic pastoralists whose ancestors, with their large herds of cattle, migrated from the Nile Valley and southern fringes of Ethiopia highlands over 2,000 years ago. They are tall and hardy people whose diet for most of the year consists of milk supplemented by meat and blood from the veins of the living cattle. This family belonged to a section of the Bodi tribe who occupy the land around the lower slopes of Mount Smith, where they graze their cattle safely away from the Sese area near the river. This is the confluence of Muyiri River in Mursi territory. The Mursi are a tribe of approximately 5,000 cultivating pastoralists. Culturally, they are largely a pastoral people, but now depend on agriculture for 3/4 of their subsistence needs. A series of droughts that began in the early 1970s has forced about 1/5 of the tribe to abandon pastoralism altogether and migrate to the region around Mount Mago, 1,776 meters, which lies in the rain shadow of the eastern wall of the Omo River. The most men are tall, of a larger frame than the body, and wear no clothes. The women practice an unusual form of lip mutilation, which is believed to have its origins as a response to Arab slave traders who penetrated the area in the mid-1850s. Apparently, the slavers could find no market for women who are disfigured this way. When they are young girls, a small incision is made in the lower lip, and the hole is stretched until a 5-inch diameter disc can be inserted. Only about half of the women now perform the mutilation, but those that do consider it an enhancement of their beauty. Although governments in the region have shown some initiative towards disarmament, there seems to be little effort by international organizations to address the issue of small arms proliferation in the Horn of Africa. The UN, through its agency UNDP, has had no specific program to that effect. Well, that's all we had time for this week on The Focal Point, a journey that has taken us to an unusual part of our region where life is still a different league of its own. Don't forget to tune in 2 weeks from now for yet another edition of The Focal Point. Meanwhile, for the rest of the evening, have a pleasant time.